Welcome to this explainer. Today we are tracing the dramatic, generational roller coaster of the ancient Puru dynasty, and we're looking at it exactly as it was narrated by the sage Vaisampayana to King Janamejay. Honestly, it's a story that proves just how incredibly fragile absolute power really is. We're going to dive into a lineage of kings who were equal to the Celestials in prowess, exploring a family tree defined by unimaginable wealth, catastrophic defeat, and some pretty miraculous comebacks. But before we untangle the family tree, just picture this. A mighty, world-conquering empire suffers such complete, utter devastation that they are forced into a 1,000-year exile, literally hiding out in a forest fort, fled in fear. That is exactly the kind of extreme volatility and high-stakes drama we are dealing with today. Okay, here is how this epic is gonna unfold. 1. The foundation of the Puru. 2. Bharata's great succession crisis. 3. A golden age and sudden collapse. 4. The 1,000-year exile. And 5. The legacy of the sacred land. Let's kick things off with Era 1, foundation of the Puru. The texts make a really powerful claim right out of the gate. They state this was an unbroken line of heroic kings where not a single monarch lacked prowess. We were talking generation after generation of elite chariot warriors who literally subjugated the earth. From Puru to Pravira, through Manasyu and Ilina, these leaders were considered equal to the gods in strength. They brought the whole world under their subjection, seamlessly passing absolute power down the ancestral line, all the way until it reached King Dushmanta. Which brings us to Era 2, Bharata's great succession crisis. Now, King Dushmanta's son, Bharata, was a massive deal. He actually gave his name to this entire race, and his fame spread far and wide. But his legacy almost ended right there. You see, Bharata had 9 sons across 3 wives, but he wasn't happy. None of them matched his greatness, leaving him deeply displeased. And then comes a truly shocking twist of ancient royal pressure. The mothers, angry and desperate, actually slew all 9 of their own sons. The bloodline essentially vanished overnight. That is, until a massive sacrifice and the grace of the sage Bharadwaja granted Bharata a true heir, Bhumanyu. Moving right along to Era 3, Golden Age and Sudden Collapse. So, Bhumanyu's heir stabilizes the kingdom, setting up what I can only call incredible historical whiplash. First, look at King Suhotra's reign. The earth was literally sinking under the weight of its own prosperity. We are talking endless wealth, gems, and thousands of sacrificial stakes dotting the landscape. Yet just a few generations later, King Samvarana takes the throne and it is a total nightmare. Devastated by famine and pestilence, he gets absolutely crushed by the Panchalas, who invade with 10 massive army battalions known as Akshohinis, stealing the entire empire. And that leads directly into Era 4, the 1,000-year exile. Completely defeated, King Samvarana and his remaining loyalists flee in terror to the banks of the Sindhu River. And get this, they stayed there for a staggering 1,000 years, 10 centuries of a world-conquering bloodline, reduced to hiding out in a forest fort at the foot of the mountains. Just imagine that for a second. An entire legendary dynasty forced into the woods, surviving generation after generation in total obscurity. Until one magical day, the illustrious Rishi Vasishtha approaches their fort. The desperate exiles completely rush out to salute him, worshipping the sage with an arghya, a sacred offering of water, and just absolute reverence. Because to them, he represents the very first glimmer of hope they've had after a millennium of darkness. King Samvarana himself goes up to the seated Rishi with this desperate plea. He says, "Be thou our priest, O illustrious one. We will endeavor to regain our kingdom." And to this heavy request, Vasishtha simply replies, Om. It's the ultimate sound of consent, signaling his willingness to completely change their destiny. And the turnaround is miraculous. Empowered by Vasishtha's sacred mantras, Samvarana is suddenly infused with this unstoppable power. The text actually describes him as becoming the veritable horns of a wild bull, which just paints such a vivid picture of sheer violence and relentless momentum, doesn't it? The capital is violently retaken. Samvarana reclaims the sovereignty of the whole earth, forcing monarchs to pay tribute to him once again. Which brings us to our final chapter, Era 5, Legacy of the Sacred Land. Restored to absolute power, Samvarana has a highly virtuous son named Kuru. Now, you've probably heard of the field of Kurukshetra, right? It's the site of India's most famous epic war. Well, it exists because of King Kuru. Through his deep devotion and asceticism, this physical, geographical field was permanently transformed into sacred land. His pious acts left a literal mark on the earth that still resonates to this very day. From Kuru, the lineage swells into the gigantic Ahila dynasty. We fast forward through some celebrated heroes, Avikshit, the powerful Parikshit, down through Dhritarashtra and his 8 sons. The empire grows to massive proportions, eventually landing on the unrivaled King Pratipa. And Pratipa has 3 sons, Devapi, Santanu, and the mighty warrior Valhika. But here is the major twist. Pratipa's eldest son, Devapi, the rightful heir to this massive, hard-won empire, shockingly gives up the crown. He chooses the life of an ascetic, voluntarily leaving absolute sovereignty to his brothers. So we really have to ask, after millennia of bloodshed, 1,000-year exiles, and miraculous resurrections to secure this throne, what new epic chaos will this sudden, voluntary surrender of power unleash?